All right, y'all. Welcome to Blacks with Power, the show for blacks in America who want to discover ways to harness their power in order to protect the gains won by the struggles of our ancestors and advance the cause of freedom for themselves, their family, and for others. We believe that for America to be great, for America to be that more perfect union that our Constitution calls for us to be, then we must have racial reconciliation in this country. And for there to be true reconciliation, blacks in America must empower themselves in order to compel and encourage repentance for the system and ideology of white supremacy and privilege that has betrayed the ideal of liberty and justice for all. I'm Father Jabril Ballantine, and I will be your guide towards harnessing your power and leveraging it in effective ways so that we can see the changes that we need to see in order for black lives to matter in this country. Thank you all for listening. You can visit us online at blackswithpower.com. Please like the Facebook page, facebook.com/blackswithpower, and join in on the discussion. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, on Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, YouTube. Listen to previous episodes. Give us a thumbs up, give us a thumbs down even if you don't like it, and let us know by writing a review. And share your favorite episodes with family, with friends, because truly, beloved, all hands are needed. And now we have a lot to discuss, so let's get down to it. In this episode, I want to bring back along the first repeat offender to be on Blacks with Power, Minister Reggie Key, my brother Reggie Legend. He's the author of over 11,000 poems in haiku. Seeking to increase his platform as a motivational speaker and workshop facilitator, Reggie has branched out from these simple postings and began writing social commentary known as poetorials, a combination of poems and editorials. What that means is he editorializes situations in poetic form. The catalog of these writings can also be found on his Key Topics blog, manualfortimeministries.com, and I will post a link to that so that you can see it. His first published book, Still Waters, Volume 1, Duplicate Authenticity, is a collection of poetry, haiku, and poetorials which explores the duplicitous nature of being influenced by scripture and hip-hop, the nexus between being a hip-hop head and being a Christian, paralleling his journey to walking in the spirit versus walking in the flesh. Reggie is married with 2 children. He's been married for 11 years to his wife, Kiana, who is also a minister in Manu Time Ministries, where the tagline is speaking life to unlock the power of God within you. Yo, he likes to use that's the wordsmith in him. He likes to use those word plays since his last name is Key. I'm a rib on him. He nice with them word plays, and so he gonna be unlocking the power within you because he is the key to that lock. Reggie studied at the University of Delaware, which is where he and I met, receiving a bachelor's degree in computer engineering in 2000. He went on to earn an MBA from a Grossi University with a concentration in leadership management in 2006. Reggie, my brother, welcome back. How are you?
I'm blessed, man. I'm good. How about you?
Oh, man, I'm good, thanks be to God. You know, I've been going through a lot, like we've been talking
Yes.
offline, man. Parents, my family in the Virgin Islands. Can you imagine have gone through 2 Category 5 hurricanes in less than 2 weeks? You know,
Unprecedented, man.
down there in the Virgin Islands, first got hit by Hurricane Irma, the largest storm ever recorded in the history of the Atlantic Ocean, like ever recorded. And then, 2 weeks later, less than 2 weeks later, hit by Irma. When we know how bad that went for Puerto Rico,
Right.
and as well as for the Virgin Islands. There's no hospital on the Virgin Islands anymore. There's no electricity.
Man.
For the vast majority of people, relief is slow. We don't get media attention. So most people don't know. And I tell people I went for twice in those 2 weeks. I went for 3 days, not knowing if my parents were alive. Like,
Right.
there's so many of us Virgin Islanders that have those traumatic experiences, and so many have been reaching out to me. And thanks be to God, I've been in that space where, as a clergy person, I can try to minister to them, try to bring some words of comfort for them. But just asking thoughts and prayers and your in-kind donations.
Right.
I'll put some links for y'all to donate. VirginIslandsUnited.org. I'll put that link in there because we need y'all, brothers and sisters. We need all hands on deck. I talked about Black Star Relief and Development. We know it's going to be on us. The American Black Cross, my man Lee Merritt, Sean King, they're helping out, trying to get shipments down to the Virgin Islands. But y'all know it's going to be on us, and this is what we mean by by blacks with power, empowering ourselves to do for self. But that's a long-winded answer.
Definitely post those links.
That's a long-winded answer to the question of how you doing. But never miss an opportunity to
But
start
you got
begging.
a lot. Yeah. You've been through a lot, man. So you got that right.
Hey,
you got
man.
that right. I'm glad you mentioned those links, man, because I didn't know about those.
Oh yeah, for sure. No. But like you said, been through a lot. But this brings us perfectly into the topic of discussion, because that's why we pledge. We pledge because, like we say in Invictus, my head is bloodied yet unbowed. And no matter how many blows we take, because we pledge, if our pledge process was right, and or if we recover from our pledge process properly, we understand that at a real level. And so, we know in truth that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, because we cross them burning sands and know without a doubt that none of the weapons that were formed against us were able to prosper.
Friction.
Right. Oh man, but brothers and sisters, we laugh and we joke, but that really is the point of this conversation, because we the last episode that we did together, where Reggie was talking about how he ministers with his family through the power of words, and encouraging his family to use their words in uplifting and holistic ways. We mentioned the journey of reconciliation that he and I have been on, the journey of repentance, the journey of forgiveness that he and I have been on, and that is rooted in our pledge process, right?
Yes, it is. It was.
Yeah, and so Reggie was my ADP. For those of you who did not pledge or have not pledged yet, that is my assistant dean of pledging. But Reggie was the constant force. Reggie was the one who was always there. I mean, I guess that's why they call him Megatron, because when he went through his process, he ain't missed no nights. And so even with us, he ain't missed no nights. And so he was always there, a constant force in the process. And it got us to thinking about the process in general. I mean, all of us who have been through processes, even those of us who have been through good processes, I mean, there's always a hiccup. Every chapter has had something that went out of hand, that went out of line. If you're a process that isn't just paper, sorry for y'all. But
that's like big.
just a little bit. But, all of us know, right? But it always brings me to thinking, and I tell people, even especially, not even, I won't even say even, because it's not a caveat, especially as a man of the cloth, I believe in the pledge process. I believe in the pledge process so long as it's done right, so long as it's done well. I believe in the pledge process that if it is done right and when it is done well, it is transformative and it is empowering, and it will bring us to that place where we can do the things that we are charged to do as men and women of these beloved organizations. Unlike the white frats and sororities, we exist for social purpose. We exist for social good. And when I say social purpose, I don't mean like party and bullshit like Biggie said, I mean social purpose, like the upliftment of our people. And yes, we do have fun, but we also know why we here and what responsibilities that we have, and those are things that as a Christian we're supposed to understand as well. The charge to keep we have, the God to glorify, the never dying soul to save and fitted for the sky. And so I mean, we were talking earlier, brother, and I know I can get long-winded, y'all, and Reggie is going to speak, man. I'm gonna turn over the mic to the wordsmith in a moment, but we were talking earlier, y'all, beforehand, and I was saying about how I remember when I went on this civil rights exhibition that was done at the Smithsonian. They had this live exhibit at the Smithsonian Museum of American History many, many years ago, about 10 years ago or so. And the key thing they were talking about, they had this lunch counter, and it was a live exhibit, so they had people there, and they had people sitting at this lunch counter, and they were talking about how the NAACP used to train people to be involved in nonviolent struggle. Because you got to understand, it takes a tremendous amount of strength to engage in nonviolent protest. It's, not peaceful protests like we do now, where we just march somewhere and whatever, but non-violent protests where you intentionally went somewhere where you knew people were going to slap you and spit on you and hit you with nightsticks and spray you with high-powered fire hoses and unleash dogs on you. When you knew that people were going to do that, and in order for this movement to be successful, we needed you to be non-violent.
Surrounded by violence.
Right. But while being in the crucible of violence, we needed you to be non-violent. And so they had to train. They had to train. There is no way. I mean, think about it, brothers and sisters. I know there's no way for me, if I had not pledged, there's no way that I was going to be able to sit at a lunch counter and let some person smack me and spit on me and call me all kind of names to my face, and I'm just going to sit there. At some point you're going to blow, you're going to explode. And so in order to do that and to succeed at that, you had to be trained. And for me, even though fraternities existed before that, even though pledge processes existed before that, in terms of the physicality of pledging, to me, that's where it comes in and that's where it makes sense. Preparing us for that struggle. For me, the problem becomes after the 60s, after the 70s, after the civil rights movement, and we were no longer facing that sort of struggle, the process never shifted. The process never shifted. And now this physicality has no purpose. It's not I'm smacking you and beating you and so on and so forth to prepare you for nonviolent struggle. Now it's I'm smacking you and beating you to prove that I can smack you and beating you, and you taking it just to prove that you can take it. And with no purpose, it all got out of control. That's my spiritual belief on it. I know there's a whole bunch of fraternal historians out there that might argue differently, but I think what I say makes some sense, right? And so now, without that, it gets out of hand. So, what do you think about that premise, brother? What do you think about that premise, Reggie, and how that plays into the situation of our fraternities and sororities?
Now, with the last part that you said, I really identify with that, because that to me is also the reason why, and this is a shameless plug and I don't mean it to be, but when you said that, it brings to mind my second book that I wrote, which is Defacing the Music, which gets into when the purpose of music is stripped from its core, then it becomes reckless and dangerous. And the purpose of music is to praise God. And so all music, all genres. And so when we lose that purpose and that content, then it becomes something that can and will and has become harmful to us. So in that same concept, you strip anything from its purpose and leave it hollow, is going to become an echo of recklessness.
Right.
And so I identify 100% with what you're saying. As you were, I had never heard anyone put that purpose on the inside of the pledging process, and I wholeheartedly agree with it. I remember watching The Butler, and I believe they showed that there was a scene where they showed them being trained, being spat on by one another, and being called out of their names, and seeing like you can't respond to this though, but being 100% in the moment and using that as a form of preparation for what they were going to endure. And people go through this process not to come out and then become the next vocal person for a movement such as civil rights, but there is very much so a thing that we come across every day. Even yesterday, I was thinking to myself, this morning I was thinking to myself, man, you know what? I believe that I see racism everywhere I go. And I'm not saying that racism exists everywhere I go, but I perceive it almost everywhere I go.
Right.
When I encounter someone who's not like me, my first intention is, my first mindset is, are they going to say something out of pocket to me?
Right.
Are they going to do something out of pocket to me? Like, I look at people in their eyes and I'm like, I don't know what's about to come at me right now. But if it does turn ugly, I have a process that I've gone through, and I have many things that temper me, but I have a process that I can call back to say, you know what, there was a time when someone would do something against me that I wouldn't respond against. Mm-hmm. And I have that, I can call back that temperance, I can call back that self-control in that moment to say, all right, this is not the place or time, and I can take that. Uh-huh. Now, that does not mean that you always take something on the chin. Now, one thing that I can say about the process that we went through, or the process that I went through specifically, I entered into it knowing what my limitations were. Right. I wasn't going to allow you to do whatever you wanted to do to me. So I told my big brothers before the process started, if you make me drink, if you try to force alcohol in my mouth, I'm leaving. I'm not going to stand for that.
Right.
If you want to get me to confess something else as God, knowing that I'm a Christian, I'm not going to, that my limitations end right there. So everyone has their limits that you have to define.
Right.
But with anything that does not exceed that limit, you're basically going through the process saying, I will endure. My head will be bloody, but I'm bowed. When all those are losing their head and blaming it on me, I will keep cool.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. If
Yeah.
I remember just to dive in a little bit, I remember y'all used to be mad at me because we had this thing, y'all, and they was like spit your favorite poem while taking work, you know? And my favorite poem was If. And I'm the idiot that's gonna say the longest poem.
They're like, dude, can we get the excerpt?
Everybody wanted me to say the short one, like excuses or something, you know. And I'm like, you all asked for my favorite poem. I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna take this while I'm spitting If, and I'm gonna spit it till it's done. But it's real, you know, because there's so many times, you know, and you know, I can dig back to my side. I keep it by my desk. I have bound. I laminated and I have bound all the poems that we had online, you
Mm,
know, and I still remember most of them by heart, even
yeah.
though it's 17 years later. But even the ones that I don't remember word for word by heart, I have them right over here. This pamphlet of poems that I can refer to when things get thick,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of it, you know. But then how do we come to the horrors of it? I mean, and what the horrors do to us. You know, here it is, we say that we're supposed to be brothers, you know, from a fraternal
Mm,
aspect, or we're supposed to be sisters from the sorority aspect, you know, and we're supposed to be brothers and sisters from the cross aspect, which is even worse, you know, when it gets out of hand across sorority versus fraternity and stuff like that. But how do we proclaim to be brothers, right? That's always the confounded thing. How am I supposed to really proclaim you to be my brother if all I did was get beat up by you? You know,
right.
like if I know, for instance, you know, military goes into battle, they pledge, they haze, they so on and so forth, they beat each other to a bloody pulp, but they know that they're beating each other to a pulp so that when they go in the battlefield, they won't flinch when the bullets are flying. They won't
Yeah.
flinch when combat happens. That they can trust one another. That this indeed is my brother, and my brother has my back, and I don't have to worry. Cause,
Right.
but when we don't have that purpose, we know exactly how that gets out of hand, right?
Yep. Yep. Firsthand. And I mean, even the pledging process, from what I understand, came from those who went in the military. And because a lot of people went to the military because they could not afford to go to college. And so once they got through their service and they were able to come home and go to college, they brought that mentality, they brought that process into the fraternities and sororities. That's my understanding of where it even comes from, is from a military perspective, to make sure that you're vetting the right people to get in, that you don't want somebody, because there are plenty of reasons why people want to join a fraternity or a sorority, and some of those reasons are valid, some of those reasons are meritable, others are not. Those who want to just come in and be recognized, those who want to come in and just be able to wear the letters and the paraphernalia and be a big man or a big woman on campus.
Right.
This process will weed that out, because we don't want anyone who's coming in. I it was a couple times. I'm surprised they even took me, because there was a couple times in my pre-process where I was like, look, let me tell y'all something. I'm a man coming to this. I'm not coming to this organization to make me a man. I'm
Right.
already a man. I already have my own identity. I'm not coming to have this organization enhance me. Rather, I'm going to enhance the organization when I get in. But and it wasn't a place of vanity. It was a place of, I know who I am already.
Right. Right.
Those who come into this process and don't know who they are and are trying to define who they are by the letters, it's almost like trying to put something on the end of your name to
Right.
give you more validity.
Right.
And if there's no depth of character to you already, this process that we are talking about will weed that out of you, because you won't endure what we had to endure late nights. And the physicality will be endured by when it seemed like it was chaos breaking out around us. You won't endure that if your reasons aren't true enough.
Right. 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 And
You know,
and but the problem is it ends up breaking relationships if it's mishandled, you know,
Yes,
and
easy.
you know it's. I mean, and we're about to talk about the break in our relationship because you know there was some times where we weren't cool. Reggie and I weren't cool. But you
Wait,
know,
really?
it,
Oh, brother, I thought he was. Oh, okay.
but you know every chapter that has its reputation has this in its lineage, you know,
Uh-huh.
brothers that don't fool with brothers,
Yeah.
or sisters that don't fool with sisters, you know, we have that in our and you know we call each other brother, and we can even endure each other, we can even tolerate each other, we can even grip each other up and be at the cookout with each other, but ain't really brothers. My line versus your line versus this
Yeah,
line
yeah.
versus that line, and which line is the hardest, and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
Um,
pause though. Let's even take it beyond and outside of a particular organization. We're all African Americans, the majority. I won't get into that.
yeah,
But but between fraternities, there's unnecessary beef sometimes. So, it's playful to a certain extent, but I'm sorry, this might be a quick tangent, but one of the things I have never to this day seen an accurate depiction of true black fraternity and sorority relations on picture, like in the movies. It's always, they're pitted against each other. They don't like each other. There's over a step show. Really,
right,
we got beef with somebody because of a step show and
right,
who's the best. Like that. That's never been an accurate depiction. But there's a small truth in what they then glorify and glamorize on the movies. But is there beef between a Kappa and an Alpha, a Kappa and a Q, a Kappa and an Iota, a Kappa and a Sigma, because of the fact that you got different colors, you got different letters than me? Truly, there shouldn't be.
right,
Truly, there should be an alignment because we're all there for academic productivity and for social enhancement.
right,
We
right.
just It's just different lanes and different. It's almost like the different denominations that you have in the church. Should they really be there? Maybe not. But despite our differences within the church, we're all many members, one body.
Yeah, but the breakdown is real.
Yeah.
The breakdown is real, and it's like, you know, speaking. I'm a tap out for a minute, and I'm a feign appeal to deference. Since I'm talking to my ADP, I'm a feign appeal to deference, right?
You good?
So how do you how do you believe? Because our process fell off the rails. I mean,
I did. There's no doubt about that. I would not argue with you there.
how do you believe what happened? And it doesn't have to be specifics. You know what I mean? I'm
Oh
not
no,
asking about specifics. But what happened ideologically? What happened? Relationally, that you would say that made our process fall off the rails.
ideologically, your process fell off the rails because once me and my line crossed and we were officially fraternity brothers, there was never a moment where we were sat down and told you were in the midst of organized chaos. We just thought it was chaos. And so we were like, we endured chaos. I mean, we knew that our dean and ADP weren't crazy. We knew that, this was a process that we had to go through. But there was some real steps and some real development in the process that we were not exposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I am going to get specific on this. When it comes to taking wood, when it comes to getting paddle, there's a process whereby you build up the body to develop uh, some resistance to this good wood that we were swinging, right?
Right.
But no one ever told us that don't just break out and give somebody 100 strokes. Uh, the second day after they experience this new paddle system for the new time. We just were like, yo, they can take it or not. And if you didn't take it, if you flinched, it was like, oh man, you are back, man. You soft, you
Right.
soft. But there was a process whereby, you slowly introduce someone and get them accustomed, get their hide accustomed to the process. I mean,
Right.
we were tanners. We were supposed to be tanners. We were supposed to be getting your bodies prepared to receive the work that you got, but no one sat us down and told us how that work played out. And so when we, all they told us was get the next line in. All right,
Right.
now that you're back, because the other pressure that we had was that our chapter had been non-existent for years. This once flourishing, thriving, beacon
Glorious.
of a chapter on our campus where we were on a campus where we were the minority, was gone. And so the pressure was on us not only to make it through and reinstate it, but to also continue it. And so that pressure became the focus. Okay, that's good that y'all made it, Bart. What's your next line? What's your next line coming?
Mm-hmm.
And the people who brought us in weren't, they were gone next year. They
Right.
weren't there to kind of tutor us and mentor us and make sure that we like, look, this is how you do this. You go
Right.
from this to this. We just knew like, don't make the process short. Make sure that they know that they're not some backs. Make sure that they know that this, our chapter is still the baddest. We back like we never left. Like there was all these different pressures, but no time to sit down and actually prepare and study for the process that we were to take you through.
Right.
And that was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we didn't
That's
know.
how I ended up with 2 Century Club memberships.
we
I appreciate those though, because I can throw those bona fides down and everybody shuts up. I got 2 Century Club memberships. They're like, oh, okay. But yeah, and I talk about this with some of the old school that I know from other chapters that I've been able to become endeared to. And some of them are getting back involved, right? Because that gets to that point that if you don't have that tutelage, all you know is the chaos. You don't know the organization of that chaos. You don't know the method to that madness. You don't understand not just about what goes into that work, but what that work goes into. That the physicality is part of a whole. It's a piece of a whole that's designed to all fit together as component parts. And if you don't know that, all you do is you go with what you know. And what you know is the chaos. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember, there's a saying, perception is reality. If you perceive chaos, then the reality of what you're bringing the next line through is true chaos, not organized chaos. The organized part is now missing. Now it's just straight up chaos.
Yeah. And to make sense of this for people who may have not gone through this process or anything like that, to make sense of it, I always say, in marriage, right? Your parents never tell you how difficult marriage is.
They do not.
Your parents never show you behind the veil. All you see is either they had a good marriage or they had a bad marriage,
Yep.
And you don't know the work that goes into it or the work that they didn't do. You know what I mean? You all you see is the end result. And so many times we go into marriage with our notions of what we saw, and then when we get behind the veil, we like, oh my Lord, what is all this? And it's the same sort of thing. It's like no one tells you what goes into the makings of a good process. How you actually plan out. And that goes back to the point that we were talking about before, or that I was talking about before, about, the strategy of this physicality is going to help prepare you for these nonviolent protests. Yeah. So now, from a strategy perspective, before we even start a line, what are we preparing them for? What battles are they taking on? Okay, now, this is the battle. And believe me, brothers and sisters, the battle is clear. If y'all thought there were no more racial battles, the times have shown you that there are still battles in our community. So what battle are we really preparing men and women for? Now that we know the battle, now we work our way back. What component parts have to go into preparing, for our sake, a man to be able to stand in this battle and lead in this battle? Okay, he needs a little bit of this. He needs a little bit of that. He needs a little bit of this. He needs some more of that. We ain't getting billy clubbed and fire hosed no more. There ain't that much need for the physicality no more because we ain't got to take it.
But the mentality,
though. There needs to be a whole heck of a lot more. And I loved it. That was one of the things that you were good at. I remember one time you told us, you had us all sitting on the wall, told us, Let me staple your tongue.
Man, I done forgot that. Oh man.
I remember it though. I remember it. It was like, staple my tongue. What in the hell? Is this man crazy? But to be able to think through that, and I ain't gonna tell y'all that, because if y'all don't know, then good. I need y'all to be confused by that for a moment and figure it out later. But that mentality to figure stuff out, to challenge yourselves mentally, because that is the height of the struggle now. So how are we preparing people? But we didn't have that. Like you said, you all weren't given that veil, and so what we experienced was true chaos. And it was chaos for the sake of chaos.
And the thing of it is, chaos cannot sustain itself for too long before it either implodes or explodes without an infrastructure that can keep it together it's very much so like if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can keep your head, that head is kept by order, that head is kept by instruction, and we simply didn't have it. We had a framework, but not an infrastructure. There is a difference.
Right.
A framework is just something that's just stands, but an infrastructure has there's something moving in an infrastructure. There is room for mechanisms in infrastructure.
Yeah, checks and balances. Right. There's accountability structures. There's checks and balances where there's a pullback time where you all could look and say, wait a minute, this is just chaos. This ain't getting them nowhere, and
to be honest, I don't want to make it seem like we were just some wild monsters up in this piece, but because there was a time when I can remember your dean pulled me to the side and was like, that's enough. Like you need to go outside. And, I remember getting all mad, and I got caught up in the moment. We talked about this last time, how, words had a lot to do with how each of us became who we became.
Right.
Because the words that were spoken to me while I pledged, and the words that were spoken to me by my line brothers when I came out was, you're going to be the crazy one. And I'm like, why I got to be the crazy one? And I didn't really stop to assess why. It was an honor to be considered the crazy one. Like, right. Oh, I'm gonna be the crazy one? Okay, so I'm gonna be the crazy one then.
Right.
Now, I'm gonna take that mantle and I'm gonna run with it.
Right. That's what I do.
All right. If I gotta take the mantle, I'm gonna take that, and I'm gonna make sure that they know I'm the crazy one. Megatron, all right, you're gonna see the strong arm. You're gonna see, the I'm the new whatever, whoever came before me that had that title.
Right.
And the danger of words when there's no content within them, there's no structure within them is we'll take them on. Even though I had even though I had my limits, I still allowed this new label to come upon me and say, okay, well, this is who I gotta be, and this is what I have to uphold. Then I'm gonna be that then.
Right.
Because now, we went from the other thing that was a danger for us is we went from being neos to the statesmen of our chapter.
Right.
Because there was nobody else.
Right.
So there was no process where we kind of learned slowly, okay, let somebody else. We probably shouldn't even have brought in a line. It should in an ideal situation, there would have been some other brothers that would have brought in the next line. And then we would have had like the third generation from us or the second generation from us, not the first generation from our process, our pledging process, because there was nothing for us to internalize and understand.
Right.
You mentioned marriage, and I want to mention really briefly the next step that comes after marriage. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes
the baby and the baby carriage.
The baby. No, but real talk though.
Right.
If you are disciplining your child, and there is corporal punishment that is necessary to me in children, the Bible says that spare the rod, spoil the child. Mm-hmm. I believe that wholeheartedly. It says that foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from them. However, if a parent becomes a child and all they see is, well, I got beat when I was a kid with switches and all manner of stuff and, belts and all that type of stuff, and I got hit in the head with the belt buckle one time, but their parents never told them, look, my fault, I got out of hand that one time. This is how it was supposed to work. Be, right. This is why we do what we do. I told my sister, who's 8 years older than me, I had my kids before she did, at least my first child. And as she's kind of trying to discipline her child, her daughter, I told her the minute you pick up whatever it is that you're going to discipline your child with, your goal should be to put it down.
Mm-hmm.
Your
Mm-hmm.
goal should be, I'm picking this up to strike my child, but eventually my goal is to get to a place where I don't have to pick that thing up anymore. I can just point to it and they'll know, like, oh, snap, I need to get in line.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know that, though, going into disciplining your child, then it's easy to become reckless
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know that there's a mentality where eventually you should be able, that becomes a symbol. The paddle just becomes something that comes out and it's like, oh, snap, I better get in line. Let me get my life
Right.
because
Right.
that's here now. That
Right.
that component is here now.
Yeah. And that,
Without that,
and that's where and that's one of the things where things went off the rail with us,
abuse
because
comes
the
in.
paddle was not. We knew we was gonna get the paddle. It didn't matter if we had
Sure.
all of our
That's
assignments
true.
done. It didn't matter if we knew all our poems. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was like, we're gonna have this work time. So at some point it became, you know what? I ain't even gonna do this work. I do not have it, big brother. But by the time it was just, we know we gonna take work, so why
Out of the way.
why do what we're supposed to do if we gonna take work anyway? Let's just take the work.
You're gonna take an L regardless. That is true.
And it gets out of hand. And the reason all of this is important, brothers and sisters, is because, I look at the setup that we had, between our two lines, oh my God, could you have imagined what we could have done on campus with our two lines? I mean, oh my Lord. But we never got to do that. You know what I mean? We never got to do that. And, to this day, I think I'm the only one of my line brothers that can say that I've reached out to every one of y'all. I know that one of my line brothers speaks with one of yours.
One of your line brothers was my cousin. I found out right before he got there that he was my cousin.
Right.
But we're cool now. But we didn't talk a lot before, so we don't talk a lot now. But that aspect even damaged a familial tie, a familial connection.
Right. And me and two of your line brothers were floor mates freshman year. I still got the picture where the three of us was standing like, geez, I remember when I saw my dean, and I didn't know what was going on, but I saw him and he ain't look well, and I was ready to go to war. That's how close we were. I was ready to go to war because I thought somebody had hurt. Somebody had hurt him, but I thought somebody had hurt him. And I was like, yo, where they at? We going right now. And he had to calm me down, like, yo, just chill, because I was ready to go. That's how close we were. And
before the process. Yeah.
And all of that fell apart because of the process. And that's not the goal of the process. And I know, and we're talking about us because that's our entree into all of you all, because what we want is ultimately this, but it took work for Reggie and I to be brothers. You know what I mean? Like, we had some healing to do, but for me, it came to a point, and I'll tell you, for me, what happened was, as part of the process, that was one of my one too many strikes, and I got put out of Delaware, and so getting put out of school, one of my high school football coach was at Bowie. He lived in Bowie, Maryland at that time. He went to Bowie. He was frat from Bowie, and there was frat at Bowie that he got me into school. He got me into Bowie after I got expelled, and the brothers at Bowie took care of me, and showed me the brotherhood that I didn't get before, or that I didn't see before. And that brotherhood that they showed me, that's why I love Eta Zeta. That's my chapter away from chapters, But I'll do anything for them, because it's because of them and the love that they showed me that I still wanted to finish my process and be an alpha. And as part of that healing for me, I recognized that regardless of the process falling off or not, the foundational reason that I'm able to say that I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha is because of you all. And so all things work together for good for those who love the Lord.
I was thinking about that a couple minutes ago.
And how can I remain mad at you? And yes, you directly, you know, how could I remain mad at Reggie? How could I remain mad at the other brothers if they had a hand ultimately, even if they didn't know it? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Hmm.
But if they had a hand in getting me to this place and into this frat that I love.
Hmm. That sounds like me in the Catholic Church. For a little while, once I had some of the scales removed from my eyes in my walk in Christ, and I realized how much the Catholic Church has done to keep many people, many Christians in darkness, not intentionally, but just putting in so much tradition and religion into a relationship with God by making up new laws and new rules where now we walk in the spirit, we walk after the spirit, not the flesh. But there were so many rules regarding the flesh that I was mad with the Catholic Church for a long time. And then I had to stop and think, you know what though? If not for the Catholic Church that was in my neighborhood, though, I wouldn't know Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to forgive, and I had to say, okay, they still were my entry into this relationship that I have with God through Jesus Christ. So I hear a parallel in what you just said
Oh
in that. So
yeah,
I just wanted to put that out there.
but that's great, because that's exactly why I say, as a priest, as a clergy person, I believe wholeheartedly in the pledge process, because when done right, it's theological. When done right, it's formation, and that formation always leads to reconciliation. And so, you know, I mean, I know a lot of brothers, I know a lot of sisters who do not have good relationships with other brothers, other sisters in their own chapters because of
Yeah.
stuff that's happened, And what we're saying is that, what I'm offering is that we can't be who we need to be in these times unless we are able to heal those breaches that exist within ourselves. Unless we are able and willing to reconcile with our own quote unquote brother and our own quote unquote soror, how we gonna ever succeed in the work fighting racism in this country?
Yeah. A house divided cannot stand.
Right, right. And Lord knows we are needed. Lord knows we are needed. I mean, it was the fraternities and sororities that led the civil rights movement. You can't point. I mean, there's probably somebody probably could find one, but I'll say tongue in cheek, you can't point to a civil rights leader that wasn't in one of the organizations. And that's by design, because that's part of the training that they went through. Yes, I know brothers from that talk about King's process at Boston.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that talk about his process at Sadistic Sigma, Sigma chapter, and yes, he did not pledge at Morehouse, he pledged at Boston. So, but that's part of his process, and people who know the lineage can talk about how the older brothers, Edward Brooke being one of the older brothers that had a hand in making Dr. King,
Man.
talk about how they identified him and they saw his potential from what they saw online. And they were not surprised by who he became after what they saw online.
Discipline. Now, I laugh because can you imagine though? And this is just a framework of what it is. Can you imagine? And thank God, our the chapter is thriving now. They're doing amazing now. Like I am proud to see what they're doing now. They have numbers and they're doing work in the community and in the campuses, which is what they should be doing. But can you imagine Can you imagine what type of leader, civil leader, we might have had in Dr. King if he had gone through, if he was on your line, being that there was no median between, you have a thriving chapter and or the comparison I'm trying to make is what you said, that you had an Eta Zeta where you were brought in by these brothers and they probably were checking you out and seeing how you were. You were checking, but you could check them out and see what their motives were and see what their character was because you could see brothers on campus. We had no brothers on campus, and
Right.
then we're charged to instantly build it back up. We should have built slower so that we could allow people to know who we are. As everyone knew us because we were a tight knit community as African Americans on a majority white campus. But to know who we are as a chapter, as Alpha Phi Alpha, to know what we do, to know what we stand for, and then for us to be able to see you and have you come to us and say, well, what are you guys about? And we're like, well, first of all, what are you about?
Right.
And then be able to see it like they saw in Dr. King, like we see something in him. Like I didn't know what to see in you and your line brothers. I knew y'all, a lot of us were engineers studying students,
Right,
not all of us, but there wasn't enough that I knew about you to be able to know what to pull out, what should be brought out of you in this process.
right, right,
Not taken away from you in this process, but
right.
brought out of you in this process.
Exactly,
That
exactly,
was missing.
exactly. And see, when that critical piece is there, when those of us who are doing the pledging have identified the pledgee and their strengths and can tool the process in order to draw out their strengths and enhance their strengths.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can see you as a brother.
Yeah.
Now I can
Yeah.
embrace you as a brother, because it really is a school for the better making of men.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen something in you and I've identified it, and I know it's needed and I know it's necessary. I know that's a talent that the Lord has given you, and I am nurturing it. I am kneading it. I am refining it. Iron sharpens iron, fire sharpens, refines it. I am putting it through the fire in order to refine it. But if I haven't done that work, then I'm just putting it to the fire to burn it.
Yeah.
And then how can we be brothers if you put me in the fire to burn me?
Right.
And so what we're talking about is doing this process with intentionality so that you really are raising up your brothers, raising up your sisters. And so those of you that are still on campus, those of us that are off campus that still have interactions with folk on campus, the message is to be bringing out the best in that person with intentionality, to be able to state at a meeting when you all are identifying who's going to be on your line, to be able to state their qualities that you believe the process will draw out. And if you can't do that, then what are we doing?
Right. Right.
If we can't say, man, I want Reggie to be on the line because, man, I see his determination and him knowing who he is and being firm in who he is, and I really think that is a sound leadership quality that will enable him to do X, Y, Z. And so on and so forth, on down the people. And for those people that we can't say that for, next. Maybe we need, nothing against him, maybe we need to spend more time getting to know him, but this ain't the time, because I wouldn't know what to do with him online. I wouldn't know how to pledge him. So, brother, what would you say to young men and women on campus today who are responsible for bringing in the next lines of members for their fraternities and sororities?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, what can I say that we haven't already said? What you just stated is a powerful mechanism that I'm not even sure is being done in a widespread type of way, whereby you have identified, because we get so caught up. Okay, so here's what I'll say. Don't get caught up in numbers. Don't get caught up in, if you're starting a chapter or restarting a chapter, or you have this legacy that you feel like you have to endure. Toss all that out the window. Toss that to the side. And if you begin to focus on the individual versus the organization is going to flourish. Mm-hmm. If you begin to focus on, even as you just said, what talents do we see in them, and not just what talents do we see in them that we can bring to the chapter and make the chapter better. No, what do we see in this person that we want to enhance, that they would be enhanced?
Right.
Because when you enhance the individual and you have a group of individuals, you enhance whatever they now belong to.
Right.
Because now you are crafting an influencer. You are crafting a leader in a way that's going to be everlasting and enduring beyond what it is that they're doing. I mean, as big as fraternities and sororities are, there's still a small microcosm of what's in this world. And we have to be preparing fathers. We have to be preparing mothers. We have to be preparing husbands and wives. We have to be preparing leaders of industry. And if we pay attention to the individual and their traits, then what we're doing will be firm but delicate enough to understand that we're not meant to break somebody all the way down before we build them up.
Right.
The breakdown process is necessary. I mean,
Oh yeah.
if you break down a good steak, there's going to be some juice that just renders out that's going to make it lovely. But if you keep it in that fire too long, though,
Yeah. You can't eat it. It's
nobody can do
useless.
anything with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you don't break it down all the way too quickly either.
Right.
It's a process that has to last long. We were so big on having a process that lasted long. We were proud to say like we lasted like 16 weeks.
Right.
But
All right. All right.
you don't just have a process be prolonged just for the sake of saying you were on for a long time. There's a marination process, and there's that rendering process that breaks down the elements of what that person has for the purpose of enhancing it and making it better. And however long that process takes is how long it takes. You don't just do it. You don't just endure it and make it long just for the sake of making it long.
Right. Right. Exactly. And when we do it that way, you don't just make it short for the sake of making it short either. You make it just the right time for the specific crop of individuals that you are enhancing and raising. And that takes intentionality to know, yeah, we have a window that we think is going to
Right.
take, but who knows? This group might be done in 3 weeks. I'd be hard to believe, but this group
Right.
might be done in 3 weeks. This group might take 2 years. Hopefully not, but you never know. But it's going to last as long as it needs to last to accomplish the goal of drawing out the qualities that we've already identified in this group of people and helping them to use their qualities as a symbiotic force. Because each of them will have different strengths, and we want their strengths to be enhanced, and we want them to be able to use their strengths as a unit, as one body.
That just reminds me of locking up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you lock up. One of the reasons why you lock up is to protect your weaker parts.
Right.
your uncomely parts. Now there will be somebody on the end and somebody on the front that will bear the brunt of that, but everybody on the inside is protected. And so when you pull up the strengths and downplay the weaknesses and come together, like you said, in that symbiotic type of relationship, then now my strengths are covered, my weaknesses are covered by my line brother's strengths.
Right.
And that's how you learn I don't have to be the one, even though there's a rock at every line, you don't have to be all end all of everything, because you have other people who have strengths, and you should be able to, a good process will have the people who are going through it be able to identify,
exactly.
Okay, I see my line brother's strengths. He's good at that though.
Right.
And he's good at this part. So let's make sure he takes that work.
Right.
let's make sure he's the one that gets it. He's the thinker of the line. He's the one that can get us where we need to be and get us and get the information that we need to spit in a way that is, articulate, in a way that we can remember it all in a good way. Everyone has strengths.
Right.
And to be able to have those downtimes and to have the energy and capacity to be like, okay, why am I going through this? There has to be some more explanation given even to the people who are going through the process, instead of just trying to scare them like, oh man, you're going to be up late. It's going to be some work that you're going to it's going to be maddening. But there should be some honesty, some transparency, like this is going to enhance you.
Right.
And do you have the confidence in your process to say, just trust the process?
Right. Yeah. At stages along the way, there should be that thing that's gonna, those pull-out sessions, where, look, we ain't online right now.
Yeah.
We gonna slowly but surely let you behind the veil. We're gonna slowly but surely show you the organization that is going into this chaos that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You ain't gonna learn all the organization until you cross, because that would defeat the purpose. But at various stages, we're going to pull back the veil a little further, a little further, a little further, so that, like it says, I believe, Lord, help my unbelief. It's like, I trust y'all, big brothers, but help my mistrust.
Yeah.
And when you pull back those layers, that gives us confidence to say, okay, what I'm going through right now seems crazy, but what I went through before seemed crazy, and they explained that to me, and it made sense. So I'm going to trust them that this makes sense too. I don't understand it right now, but I'm going to trust them that this makes sense too. And that way, because chief of all these things, it does not matter how hard your line went. It don't matter how hard you pledged the line after you. It don't matter. What matters is how well you are as brothers. If y'all are brothers, that matters more. Because that's at the end of the day, and it's not just brothers like, oh, we kick it, we hang out, but if y'all are brothers where, like you said earlier, I can depend on you, you can depend on me, we know each other's strengths, and we can rely on each other, and we have no problem working with each other because we know that we have identified a goal and we go into that goal together. If that can be accomplished, that's what matters most. And so, that's what we hope for you all. That's why we shared this bit of insight into our relationship, shared the work that we've done to get to where we are now, to be brothers now.
Well, I don't know though. I don't know. Have we done a good job of really getting into the meat of us though? And the steps that you actually initialized for our reconciliation. Do we have time to get into that, or?
Sure. Go ahead. Open it up. I did. Like I said, I came to a point where I had realized that I loved Alpha. I had that experience with the brothers of Eta Zeta, and I loved the frat, and I had this conviction that I couldn't not have a relationship. Like I said, I went back one by one and tried to have relationship with everybody, with all of y'all that were involved in pledging me and pledging us, and for some that was receptive on various levels, for one that was not receptive, but intentionally had to go back and I think, as I think about it even further, it started when I started getting my legitimacy, my papers.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that process, I think that might have been the impetus for me. I'm trying to remember back that far, but that might have been the impetus for me in reaching out to folk. I there's this thing in the frat where, in every frat, there's this thing where you don't want to be known as suspect.
Right.
And I had pledged. You know what I mean? I had pledged, and I had a hard time being known simply as a grad brother.
Oh yeah.
I had a hard time being known as a lambda.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that I could legitimately acknowledge that I had pledged, I mean, I could say anything, but no, in the core of the frat, ain't nobody gonna believe you unless they can verify.
Right.
You know, and in order for me to feel comfortable with wanting to claim the reality that I had pledged, it mattered to me. I didn't want to be known as that guy who had just signed some papers.
Right.
The only way I could do that is if I had reconciled. And yeah, that took a lot of swallowing pride, because I was mad. I was mad at y'all. There's scars to prove it. But like I said at the first, in terms of, okay, so I want this. Now, I want that legitimacy. Now, how do I go about getting it? How do I know what I meant. I know that meant I had to reconcile. Okay, so how do I bring myself to talk to these fools? And that's the language that I probably would have used back then. How do I bring myself to reach out to them? And that's where it became, because I had this example of something so sweet, that college experience that I lived on the fringes on during my time at Bowie State. Those brothers accepted me. I learned later that they didn't even know that I had pledged. They just knew that their old school had told them,
Wow.
take care of him.
Yeah, yeah.
And they let me do programming in the name of Alpha Phi Alpha, because I did a whole lot of social justice programming on campus, and they let me do programming because I didn't have an organization, so they let me use their organizational ability to have programs. They would take me with them to places and stuff like that, and I learned later that they didn't know, and that made me even more in love with Eta Zeta, you know, and knowing that I did, and knowing that I had claim to that experience because I had pledged. You can't claim that experience if you ain't pledged. Knowing that I had claim to that experience because I had pledged, I didn't want to abandon that experience and abandon that rapport because I was too mad at y'all. And that would have been the thing that would have kicked it. If I was too mad at y'all, couldn't bring myself to reach out to y'all, couldn't find a way to try to reconcile with y'all, I would have had to quietly agree to just resign myself to be a lambda, to be a grad brother. And that laid the groundwork for me to say, like I said earlier, you know, how could I be mad at them? How could I remain mad at them when it's because of them that I was able to experience what I experienced in this circle?
Yeah. Time out though, because what I'm hearing, the parallel to what we're talking about in the fraternity, in the church is church hurt. Many of us have experienced church hurt, where someone who claimed to be a Christian did some things, said some things to us that we love to just kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know why that's a lot of our mentalities, but we want to throw everything out because of an experience with one or a group of people, or most of the time it's several different people with the same mindset. And it takes us being able to see that there's other mindsets within the organization, within the body of Christ, to know that, oh man, I love what I experienced here. And really, it's not about the experience. It's about, you have to love the principle of the thing. You have to love God himself in order to accept his imperfect people. And so the parallel for you is you love Alpha, you love the Alpha and the Omega enough to say, you know what though, my experience with a few does not damage my relationship with the whole.
Right.
And in order to accept the whole, I have to accept everything that comes along with it.
Yeah.
Realizing that everything is flawed, everything is just, anything that's comprised of humanity, of human beings, is going to be fallible.
Yeah.
But there's something that we all serve that is infallible, or that should be infallible, that connects us all despite that.
Right.
I just wanted to touch on that.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's spot on. You know, it's that commitment to reconciliation. You know, like I can't embrace the whole if I don't embrace the sum of its parts. You know how that scientifically that doesn't work.
Nope.
You know, logically that doesn't work, and so relationally that doesn't work. So how can I embrace? And that's what it came down to. How can I embrace Alpha and everything that I know that it is, if I don't embrace Alpha, which is you and the brothers who pledged me? And so I by God's grace, I was able to swallow my pride.
That was definitely God working. I remember when you called. I think towards the end of the conversation, it might have been a 2-hour conversation. And I was like, this ain't nothing but God, because you being in your own emotions, and me, I could have became prideful in my reaction, because we don't like, as people, as a person now, not Alpha, not Christian, as people, we don't like for somebody to come and tell us like, what you did there was wrong.
Right.
You wronged me with your actions and with your words. And we don't like to face that. We like to deflect. We like to say, well, no, your role was, and to get defensive.
Right.
But if let me know if I'm wrong. But in our conversation, I let my guard down and was like, you know what, go ahead. Do what you need to say, I will cop to that. Like, yeah, that was wrong. And I think that's what helped. Both of us were able to to put our pride to the side and say, you know what though, for the sake of building, let's just resolve this.
Oh yeah, it was definitely two-way, because I wouldn't have been able to fully reconcile with you. I wouldn't be able to. I mean, I'd have still forgiven. I tell people that you have that level of forgiveness where I need to forgive. I need to forgive him, Lord, so that I can move forward.
Speak. Even if they don't
repent.
process.
Right. Even if they don't repent, even if they don't participate in the process. But in order for me to forgive you and have relationship, and a relationship that's not one-sided, you got to be invested in that process too.
Yeah.
And so, thanks be to God, you were invested in that process too. And so, I don't know what made you receptive to that.
The same thing that made you even feel like you had to make that call. And that's the Christ that's on the inside of us. That's the only I can speak to. And then the fact that, I'm not perfect. I will continue to be infallible. I'm sorry. I will continue to be fallible as long as I'm in this flesh. But I understand that there's a maturation and a sanctification process whereby every day I should be dying more to the flesh. I should be mortifying my flesh as God reveals and identifies the areas in my life that are imperfect and that need work. And he doesn't do it in a way that is condemning. He just, Scripture says that we are called out of the darkness and into his marvelous light. As we are called out of the darkness, guess what happens? We get to see our uncomely parts. Mm-hmm. And, when you're in a relationship with somebody, whether it's you and I relationally or my wife or you and your wife, that's the place where you're the most vulnerable. You're like, I don't want you to see me right now. I'm ugly right now. But when we realize there's some ugliness in both of us, though, and we say, and that one reconciliation, I did a sermon 2 weeks ago about reconciliation. And the one thing that when you look for a definition of reconciliation, it says that it is the exchange of equivalent value. Mm-hmm. 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 There's either when there's horizontal reconciliation, there's equivalent value that we're exchanging. You know what? There's some things that I did that were out of pocket. There's some things that you did. Let's exchange that. Let's put that to the side. Now we're reconciled. Right. There's also a vertical relationship where you are exchanging different values. That's what Christ did for us. He said, look, I know no sin. I knew no sin. You know sin. I'm going to take your sin off of your shoulders so that you can now be equal in me, so that you can reclaim your identity in Christ, right. Your identity of God in me in Christ, right. Though. Right. And so those two different reconciliations form the cross. There's the vertical reconciliation and there's the horizontal. Yeah. And you and I both knew that work was inside of us. And to honor that work, you were able to come to me and I was able to receive you and say, you know what? there's a role that I played in you being irreconciled to Alpha that I'm a cop to, so that we can be healed as brothers. The healing had to take place. Amen. Now, I don't know what it was. How did that feel though? When you started dialing this number, I forgot how you even got my number, but when you started dialing this number though, like what were your thoughts? Like, man, how's this brother going to react?
Yeah, I had no idea how it was going to go, and I don't know if it mattered how it went. It mattered how it went, but in terms of me calling you, I knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
I knew I had to be able to say, like with the one that unfortunately I'm still not reconciled with. Mm-hmm. I know that I tried, and I know I had to do that. You know what I mean? And at some point, we can only do our part. And
we talk ourselves out of our part though when we, because we tend to think the worst of things.
So if I were to say, oh man, Reggie's gonna be angry when I call, Reggie's gonna be insulted, Reggie's gonna clap back at me, you know what? I'm not gonna call him. And then I make you the scapegoat for why I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
That's easy though.
What I was supposed to do is call you and talk to you and let you know what happened made me feel, what it did to me, so on and so forth. And if you said, okay, cool, screw you. It hurt. It would hurt. But at the same time, I know I did what I was supposed to do. And God can't say I didn't try. And bring it back to the fraternal aspect. None of the brothers could say I didn't try.
Yeah. I mean, real talk though, something that I realized even as we're talking, like you shouldn't have been the one to initialize that. I should have been the one to call you, and I didn't. So, I even extend, my apologies in that regard. I should have been the one to initialize that, not you.
Amen. But, by God's grace, reconciliation happens. Oftentimes what they say, power begets nothing without a demand. And oftentimes those that are in the position of power, they're not going to repent unless they're called to account.
True.
They're just not going to. And that's the hard thing for us to understand as black people. White folks ain't going to repent of racism and white supremacy and white privilege just out of the goodness of their hearts.
Not all of them. Some of them will.
Some of them will, but
the ones who have the most power to lose,
right,
won't.
Exactly. And the only thing that's going to bring them to repentance and reconciliation is when they're called to account.
God. God. I gotta say that, God.
Say it in your preacher voice. And so,
I don't have a preacher voice, by the way. I'm just saying,
All right. And so, but that's the journey. You know what I mean? That's the journey that I would say we want for everyone to experience. Because there is a lot of, like you said, there is the parallel between church hurt and this fraternal hurt. I think it's a good parallel because, like I said, I believe in the pledge process. I believe that our fraternities and sororities serve a righteous purpose in that march. So I love the fact that there's parallels because that just adds to that argument.
Yeah.
And so the goal is, well, for us, brothers and sisters, sharing this was to show you the hope for reconciliation, that it can happen. Because,
yes,
we ain't even, we dove into the stuff that happened, but we ain't dive into all of the stuff that happened.
No.
I ain't talked to you all about being on bed rest. I was on bed rest, y'all.
Yeah. This dude was in the... You can laugh about it. I still can't laugh about it, man. I still like, man.
Yo, but that's the forgiveness though. I still got the scars. You know what I mean? But hey, it was crazy. That's how I got the 2 Century Club memberships. But 2 of them, y'all. Check me if you want to. But they say cash me outside. But yeah, y'all don't even know the half. But at the same time, we say this because if we can reconcile, then I'd like to believe that y'all can too, and that y'all should too. I hope, and I know people have gone through some crazy stuff, but I hope that ain't too many people gone through anything, like what we did, and sure enough, not worse than what we did. But I do hope that everyone who's gone through anything could ultimately come to the place that Reggie and I have come to, because now we can unleash the power of the brotherhood that we're supposed to have, and
right.
and we need you to be able to unleash the power of the brotherhood and the sisterhood that you should have. And so we want to hear from you. Look, I tell y'all all the time, there's a safe space, because I know some of the questions that I ask y'all are deep, but there's a safe space. Go to blackswithpower.com/Facebook. I make you take an application out so that I can, know who you are and whatnot, and make sure that we keep it safe for everybody to have discussion, knowing that it's a judgment-free zone. Even beyond that, you can message me, facebook.com/blackswithpower. I want to hear from you. What are your struggles with reconciling with your brothers, with your sisters in fraternity and sorority? What are your issues? How can we help you overcome those issues? If you post them to the group, Reggie can answer those questions too. How can we help you with those struggles in that reconciliation? Because we definitely need that reconciliation. Because a charge to keep we have, a God to glorify, a never dying soul to save and fit it for the sky. We need that reconciliation, brothers and sisters, because yes, indeed, we have come a long way. We as a people have accomplished a great deal, but every day you are shown that we ain't there yet. So let us march on till victory is won. Live with power.